Before we get started, if you enjoy these type of what if videos, feel free to watch the other ones I have on my channel. I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description below. So we know the internet has popularized Buc-ees as the holy mecca for gas stations. I personally never been to one yet, but those who have, please let me know if it is everything the internet makes it out to be. But this video isn't about glorifying Buc-ees. This is about turning this location into a setting for a horror movie. So with that, let's get into it. Our fictional movie takes place just outside the small town of Sheridan, Wyoming. It seems to be in the middle of nowhere with a lone Buc-ees and a small motel next to it. The town of Sheridan is about 8 miles from it. The main character is played by Diego Luna, who travels for work on the weekends. He drives from South Dakota to Idaho every weekend, and every weekend he passes by the same buildings, the same restaurants, and the same historical landmarks. One weekend, he invites his wife, played by Rosario Dawson, and his daughter, played by Ariana Greenblatt, to join him as sort of a small family road trip. But this weekend, as the family makes their way through Sheridan, Wyoming, he notices a gas station in the middle of nowhere that wasn't there last week. This Buc-ees happened to show up out of nowhere in his mind. He never noticed any construction or any advertising teasing its arrival. It was getting late, so the family decides to book a room at a local motel, and hearing all about what Buc-ees has to offer, they decide to get some supplies for the evening and stock up for the rest of the trip. The dad goes into the Buc-ees and immediately notices how empty it is. Not empty with merchandise, but empty with the lack of customers. He sees a single cashier standing next to some Buc-ees themed t-shirts. He approaches the cashier and inquires about how long the store has been open. The cashier reassures him that this location has been open for a year now. The dad knows for a fact this place hasn't been there for a year. He drives through the same roads every weekend. He starts to question himself on how he missed it this whole time. The following day, as the family gets ready to get back on the road, they notice they have a flat tire. The Buc-ees employee offers to call him a mechanic, but he eventually shows up 2 days later. After the tire eventually gets repaired, that's when the family notices the car's radiator is broken, and therefore, they must stay more time while they figure out how they're going to pay for the repairs. That's when the dad starts to get a weird feeling about the location they're in. As Act 1 continues, a series of weird misfortunes start to happen to the family. For example, they start to notice dead rodents popping up on their doorstep every morning. Even after 4 days of being in the area, the family has yet to see anyone else shop at the Buc-ees, but every time they go in, it seems the store has less and less merchandise. The feeling of something bad is about to happen starts to worry the family, so they decide they would tap into their savings account to pay for the car repair, so they can quickly get back on the road. As soon as they reach for their phones, that's when they notice they suddenly have no service. The dad storms into the Buc-ees and demands the employee allows him to use his phone, but the lone employee reassures him that he will take care of any damages to the vehicle as soon as his mechanic arrives in 2 days. Furious with this response, the dad starts to beat up the employee. His family, stunned by this unexpected burst of anger, restrains him and takes him back to the motel room. During the second act of the film, the dad starts to take matters more serious and decides to take the 8-mile hike into town. The mother and daughter stay behind to try to investigate why they keep running into a series of unlucky situations. They head into the Buc-ees to try and find anything out of the ordinary. Upon an hour-long investigation, the only thing that seems to be unusual is a lone employee standing at the counter, staring blankly waiting for a customer. Before making their way to the exit, the mother decides to use the restroom. Everything about the restroom looked normal, until she noticed a drip coming from the ceiling. It wasn't dripping water. It appeared to be dripping blood from the ceiling. She quickly grabs a nearby mop bucket, turns it upside down, and begins to nudge the ceiling panels with the mop stick. She nudges one of the panels hard enough and what appears to be a dismembered arm falls from the top. She storms out of the bathroom, screaming as she runs towards the cashier. She eventually confronts the cashier and orders him to explain himself for having a dismembered arm in the bathroom. But once they go see it, they notice the arm is gone, with no trace of blood whatsoever. The cashier insisted the mother and daughter go home, since it seemed they were paranoid for no reason. A few days later, things take a turn for the worse. The daughter woke up one day and noticed her mom was missing. The daughter frantically searches everywhere around the motel, and eventually makes her way into the Buc-ees. Once in there, she notices there's no cashier this time. Besides her, the store is completely empty. She searches all around the store for any sign of her mom, but everything seems to be where it belongs. She checks the bathroom, and that's when she sees something terrible. Meanwhile, while the father is 3 miles out on his hike, he notices something is wrong. He checks his map and realizes he's been going in the wrong direction the whole time. He realizes that the signs directing towards town are put in the wrong spot. The feeling of being watched starts to loom over him. paranoia and lack of sleep start to take over, as a starry night sky and the moon shine over the mountains of Wyoming. He decides to set up camp for the night. As he lays in his sleeping bag, he hears sounds coming from a nearby bush. He clutches his survival knife, anticipating anything, but nothing emerges. The lack of sleep starts to cloud his vision with hallucinations as he tries his hardest to fall asleep. Visions of a shadowy figure start to appear in his peripheral vision. The father decides to take the hike back immediately, rather than wait until tomorrow. Upon an exhaustive return home, the dad notices the area is much emptier than usual. The Buc-ee sign is no longer illuminated. He notices his daughter sitting outside in tears as he rushes over towards her. The expression on her face looks like her soul has left her body, and she grabs his hand and leads him into the bathroom of the Buc-ees. Once they enter the bathroom, they see a message on the wall written in blood. It reads, "You should have stayed away." Underneath the bloody message sits a Buc-ee's mascot covered in blood. The father lifts off the head and reveals the corpse of his dead wife. The father and daughter collapse to the floor in shambles, but before a word could be spoken, the sound of police sirens echo from the outside of the store. 3 officers enter the bathroom with their guns drawn, shouting for the dad to keep his hands up. They arrest him for the murder of his wife, as he shouts that it wasn't him. As time goes on, not enough evidence was found that it wasn't the father who committed the crime, so he stayed in prison. As for the daughter, she now lives with relatives, but not a day goes by where she vows to find the people who actually took her mother from her. Thanks for watching.